I wasn't the kind of kid who got into trouble. My name's Sarah, and before that day I'd never so much as swiped a stick of gum. But at 16, frustrated, reckless, fed up with being broke, bad ideas can feel like tiny acts of rebellion. That morning, I'd screamed at my foster mom, telling her I was done pretending to be part of a family with someone who never let me forget I wasn't hers. She told me to leave if I hated her rules, so I did. No phone, no cash, just my backpack and a hoodie tied at my waist. I caught the 6:02 bus to the Omega Mart Supercenter off Highway 91, planning to wander in the air conditioning for a while, maybe sneak a snack if no one noticed. Stealing wasn't the plan, not at first. But in the health and beauty aisle, I spotted a pack of velvet scrunchies, 8 different shades, soft and clearly pricey. I imagined wearing them at school like the other girls, instead of keeping my hair in messy buns with snapped elastics. It was stupid, but I wanted them badly enough to slip one into my hoodie's front pocket, pretending to check the price. I crushed the packaging and shoved it behind a pile of sparkle paper towel packs in the cleaning aisle. I should have walked out then, but I lingered too long in the snack section, debating whether I could get away with a bag of mini chips, when a hand tapped my shoulder. Heavy, calloused, cold. "Come with me," a deep voice said. I turned to see a huge man, at least 6'3", built like a linebacker. His expression was unreadable beneath a close-cropped beard and a sun-spotted bald head. Black slacks, a navy windbreaker, and a faintly glinting badge on his chest read Omega Security. What is this about?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Theft," he replied without emotion. My face flushed hot. "Look, I'm sorry, I can pay for it. I didn't even leave the store." He stayed silent, just gripping my upper arm, firm, not brutal, but with a warning in his touch. He led me past the registers toward a pair of gray double doors labeled Employees Only. I thought about pulling away, shouting, but there was something in the calm, deliberate way he moved that told me resisting would only make things worse. We went through the doors into a dim stockroom lined with tall metal shelving stacked with crates. He stopped at a small, narrow door between 2 mop buckets, flicked a switch, and revealed a concrete staircase vanishing into darkness. "Let's go," he said, motioning down. I hesitated. "Where's the office? Don't you have cameras or another employee?" He didn't answer, just stared, tightening his grip slightly. Assuming this was some odd layout with the security office below, I stepped down. By the 3rd stair, the door slammed behind me. My chest tightened. I bolted back up and tried the knob. Locked. "What the hell?" I muttered, banging my fists against the metal. No reply. I checked my phone. No signal. Slowly, I descended again, the air growing damp and musty. The basement was larger than I'd imagined, like an underground garage but empty. Cement floor, exposed piping, and in the middle, a single old wooden chair. Chains and rusted cuffs dangled from its arms, bolted into the wall behind it. "This is insane," I whispered. The silence pressed in, broken only by the sound of water dripping somewhere to my left. I didn't want to move further inside, but staying by the stairs felt worse. I crouched low, scanning the shadows, and caught a sour smell from the far corner. Rotting meat. I tried convincing myself it was some twisted loss prevention stunt or maybe a prank, but then I thought of his badge. The stitching looked crude, like it had been sewn on by hand. No name tag, his hands covered in dried dirt, and his smell, sweat, soil, and something metallic. My gut told me this man wasn't Omega Security. I moved closer to the stairs, lifting my phone until a single bar appeared. I dialed the store. "Thank you for calling Omega Mart," a cheerful voice said. "This is Kate. I'm in your basement," I blurted. "A man brought me down here. He looked like security, but now I'm not sure. He locked me in." Her voice shifted. "What basement?" The door above creaked open. Footsteps descended, accompanied by soft whistling. I retreated toward the wall by the chair, wrapping one of the chains around my wrist like a weapon, gripping the chair with my other hand. 2 men appeared. The first, the fake security guard. The second, an older man, shirtless, gray-haired, barefoot, eyes bright with excitement, jeans stained at the cuffs. Well, the older man rasped. "She's a fiery one." "Sit in the chair, sweetheart," the imposter said. "We'll be gentle." My stomach churned. My palms were slick, my grip on the chair weakening. "I bet she's scared," the older one sneered. "Get away from me," I yelled. They laughed. "That old chair's not gonna save you," the fake guard smirked. "I like them feisty." The older man slid his belt free, wrapping it around his fist. I backed up until I hit the wall. The chair felt heavier in my hands. "Anyone down there?" A new voice shouted from above. Both men froze. Footsteps pounded overhead. alarms blaring. "Go," the older man hissed. They vanished through a hidden door at the back of the basement I hadn't noticed before, disappearing into the woods beyond. The moment they opened it, an alarm shrieked and red lights flashed overhead. A young man in uniform rushed down the stairs. Real badge, real name tag, Casey. His eyes went wide. "Holy crap, are you okay?" I dropped the chair and collapsed, sobbing. He said he was security. He locked me in. Casey called for help, and soon Kate was there, followed by police. They reviewed security footage. The imposter appeared only when I first entered the store. No employee records, no one knew him. The older man never appeared on camera at all. Behind the pipes, police found a decomposing dog carcass. The hidden door led to a corroded storm exit opening into thick forest. Kate gave me a blanket and sat with me as I gave my statement. "What happens now?" I asked. "They'll investigate," she said quietly. "And Sarah, don't trust anyone without a real Omega Mart name tag. Security's always upstairs." I nodded, still shaking. "It was just for a stupid scrunchie." She squeezed my shoulder. "You're lucky. Some girls don't walk back up those stairs. The men were never caught. At least, not yet." I never used to doubt myself when out in public. I'm not the type to overreact. As a single mother to 2 daughters ages 13 and 8, I've grown accustomed to managing life on my own. Their father lives 3 states away and rarely calls, so when something feels off, I don't panic, I observe. But what happened on that Thursday evening made me wonder how many times I'd missed the warning signs before, how close we might have come without realizing it. It was an ordinary evening in Laurel Glen, a small Tennessee town that had just grown enough to boast a supermarket. Think of a Walmart look-alike, but with dimmer lights and employees who clearly lacked much training. We headed out after dinner because Emily, my eldest, had been reminding me all week that her gym shoes were too tight, and Catherine, my youngest, wanted fresh folders for school. I was exhausted but decided to take care of everything in one trip. We parked under a flickering light at the far edge of the lot. The air was heavy, the kind of humidity that makes your shirt stick to your back within minutes. I remember it clearly because Catherine asked why the moon looked so orange, and I told her it was probably the humidity, maybe pollution, or both. Emily, true to form, muttered that it was probably the apocalypse. We went in through the garden entrance, it's always quieter there, and were hit by a blast of cold air. Catherine hopped into the cart like usual while Emily immediately pulled out her phone. I grabbed a basket, thinking we wouldn't get much. We'd been walking for about 5 minutes when we rounded the corner near the Halloween display. It was early September, yet the shelves were already stocked with candy, plastic pumpkins, giant bags of Kit Kats, and foam tombstones. Catherine squealed at the sight of caramel apple lollipops. That's when he appeared. A man, mid-30s, buzz-cut, plain t-shirt, no cart, coming around the opposite corner quickly enough to nearly collide with us. I instinctively said, "Excuse me," even though he was the one who almost hit the cart. He muttered something without looking at me and stopped next to the candy. At first I assumed he was in a hurry, but something about how he just stood there felt off. He wasn't picking anything up like a shopper would. He seemed to be listening to us. When Catherine asked to take a picture of a ghost-shaped candy bag, he flinched, like the sound startled him. Then he gave me the quickest glance, looking away so sharply it made my skin tighten. His eyes were darting, jaw tense, and he carried nothing, not even a basket, just standing there pretending to browse. I pushed the cart away, dismissing it for the moment, and we went to the women's pajama section. Catherine found some fuzzy socks she liked, and Emily wanted new leggings. I was sorting through sizes when I spotted him again. Same man, now cradling a large bag of Halloween candy awkwardly in both arms, walking by slowly. He wasn't shopping, he was watching. He passed closer than anyone would need to in such a wide aisle. I followed him with my eyes as he turned toward the shoe department, but it was clear he wasn't looking at shoes. I tried to convince myself maybe it was nothing. Maybe he just didn't understand personal space. I wanted that to be true. The girls wandered into the boys' clothing area directly across from us, and when I looked up again, he was there inside the boys' section, weaving through racks while holding that same bag of candy like it was precious. He stopped near the end cap, scanned the area, and then fixed his gaze, brief but unmistakable, on my daughters. I immediately walked over, placing myself between him and them. "See that guy?" I whispered to Emily. "The candy creep?" she replied. "Yeah, he's been circling." My stomach dropped. Emily had noticed too. We moved into the girls' section, separated from the boys by a short fabric partition. I lifted Catherine into the cart to keep both girls close and slowed my pace, scanning. For a few minutes, I didn't see him and started to relax. But then he emerged again, this time in the girls' area, still clutching the candy, pretending to look at glittery shirts clearly meant for elementary school kids. He kept sneaking quick, darting glances. The moment our eyes met, he snapped his head away and shuffled a few steps to feign interest in another rack. I turned the cart and reached for my phone, unsure whether to call someone or take a photo. But before I could decide, he slipped through the partition and looped around to the boys' side again, standing at the far opening with a clear view straight into the girls' section. Then he did something that made my stomach twist. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and stared directly at me. I froze. He looked away casually and walked off, but I no longer felt calm. My body buzzed with adrenaline. Something was very wrong. That's when I noticed another man, older, maybe mid-40s, bald, standing in electronics with arms crossed, looking directly at me. No cart, just lingering by a nearly empty shelf of phone cases. I quickly moved us into the juniors section, pretending to browse tank tops, keeping my daughters in the cart. Both now knew something strange was going on. I told Emily quietly, "Don't wander, stay close, we might leave soon." Then a third man appeared. He entered the girls' clothing like he belonged there, picked up a hoodie, set it down, wandered into baby clothes, returned, and glanced directly at Catherine in the cart. He didn't react when I locked eyes with him, just turned and walked back toward the baby aisle. I told myself, if you're right, get out. If you're wrong, no one will mock you. But I still hesitated, still tried to finish our shopping. We moved toward women's clothes. The air felt lighter. I didn't see any of them again. Slowly, I began to breathe normally. We checked out quickly. My hands shook as I loaded the trunk. Once home, I locked the doors and sat on the couch, staring at the front door for hours. Now it's nearly 2 a.m., and I can't sleep. What if I was right? What if they were watching, working together, waiting for just one moment when I let my guard down? The candy was a cover. So was the hoodie. These men weren't shopping. They weren't there alone. They weren't random. They were watching. I don't have proof. No names, photos, or video, but I have instincts. And tonight, those instincts screamed. In the morning, I'll call the store, maybe see if there's camera footage, at least report it so they have it on file. I don't expect much to come of it, but maybe it will matter. Maybe the next mother will be alert enough when the ones who linger get too close. I spent my childhood in a worn-out Appalachian town that most people simply passed through without stopping. It was the sort of place where every few houses had a porch light that didn't work, and if you needed groceries after 9 p.m., your only option was Walmart. It wasn't exactly a bad place, but it was the kind of town where unsettling things could happen quietly and get swallowed by casual conversation and the slow decay of rust. I was 16 the year it all began. Just old enough to notice the darker edges of the world, but still young enough to believe humor could shield me from the things that frightened me. That fall, my sister Ashley and I had started a silly routine of tagging along with our dad to Walmart every Wednesday night after dinner. It was his way of grabbing the things we forgot during our Sunday trip. We didn't mind. Ashley, who was 18, was loud, witty, and utterly fearless, turning those mundane errands into something that felt like a comedy act. We'd point out the strange characters who emerged late at night, moving under the harsh glare of the store's fluorescent lights like insects exposed in the dark. And that's where this began. The air was colder than usual that October evening, and the wind chased brittle leaves across the cracked pavement of the Pinehill Walmart parking lot. Dad parked his aging SUV near the cart return, muttering about the cold and the crowds, telling us not to take too long. Ashley and I were already laughing quietly as we made our way to the seasonal section. Halloween candy lined the shelves, and she dared me to slip a bag of pumpkin-shaped Peeps into my hoodie just to mess with Dad. As we turned the corner, she jabbed me in the ribs and nodded toward a man. "That guy's radiating creepy uncle vibes," she whispered. I looked and saw him, a tall, skinny man, with pale skin and thick glasses that made his eyes look unnaturally large. His brown hair was perfectly parted down the center, greasy and flat like it had been painted on. He wore a tan jacket several sizes too big, jeans that sagged slightly, and dingy off-white sneakers. I laughed nervously. "Yeah, that's a dinner special waiting to happen." Amanda smirked, adding, "Bet he's got a van with no windows." He didn't react, didn't move. We walked on, but he appeared again, 3 aisles over by the soup, later near the toothpaste, then in electronics, standing near discount headphones. Always silent, always there. Dad didn't notice. He was too focused on grumbling about the cost of beef. We checked out, packed the groceries, and headed home. He didn't follow us out. That should have been it. A weird little memory for Ashley and me to laugh about, but it wasn't. That night I couldn't fall asleep. I blamed the soda I'd had with dinner, but there was a heaviness in my chest I couldn't name. I pulled the covers to my chin, the box fan in my window filling the room with a steady hum, but I couldn't shake the sense of being watched. It wasn't just a passing thought, it felt like a presence. I got up, crossed to the window, and looked out toward the backyard. It was too dark to make out much, but my eyes lingered on the tree line. Our yard ended where the woods began. I saw nothing move, yet I locked the window before going back to bed. For weeks the feeling lingered. Every night around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, my mouth dry. My mom blamed caffeine, my dad pointed at scary movies, and Ashley teased that I was guilty over stealing Peeps. But it wasn't guilt, it was the sense of being stalked. Then came the Saturday I was alone. My parents drove 3 hours to visit family, and Ashley was at a friend's sleepover. I told them I was fine staying behind. I usually enjoyed the quiet, but that day the air felt heavier, like it was pressing against me. I tried to distract myself with video games, YouTube, even a nap, but I kept feeling the need to glance at windows, down hallways, behind shower curtains. Finally, I called my friend Jonathan, asking him to pick me up so we could drive around, maybe smoke, maybe just get away from the house. He said he'd be there in 10 minutes. I grabbed my hoodie, stepped to the curb and waited. When I climbed into his car, something felt off. Jonathan wasn't his usual talkative self. His eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror, his hands tight on the wheel. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded, but added, "Some guy's been tailing me since I left my place. Didn't think much of it, but now he's running lights to keep up." My body went rigid. "What kind of car?" He glanced again. "Silver Toyota, older, busted right headlight. Plate starts with a P." My stomach sank. I turned in my seat and froze. The silver car pulled up beside us at the red light. Behind the wheel sat the man from Walmart. Same glasses, same jacket, same lifeless stare, only now his jaw was clenched, teeth bared, eyes locked on me. He slammed his palm on the horn. I screamed, and Jonathan floored it. For nearly a minute, the only sound was the engine and my uneven breathing. "What the hell is going on?" Jonathan finally said. "That's the guy from Walmart," I stammered. "The one Ashley and I joked about. He's been outside my window. I didn't see him until now, but I felt him for weeks." Jonathan cut sharply onto Cedar Drive. "Screw this, we're going to the police." The Pinehill police station was a squat brick building that used to be a library. We pulled in hard, tires screeching. Inside, the on-duty officer was Officer Reeves, our friend Kayla's dad. A big man with a warm face but skeptical eyes. He listened as Jonathan explained, then heard my account. He asked Jonathan for the license plate, and Jonathan recited it perfectly. I'll never forget how Reeves's expression shifted when he typed it in. He went quiet, called 2 patrol units, then turned to us. "We're sending 1 car to your house and another to locate the vehicle. Stay here." My parents were called. They were already on their way back. I thought that would be the end of it, but 15 minutes later, officers found him. Not in the car, but crouched in my front yard, rummaging through the bushes under my bedroom window. Hidden behind the shrubs was a duffel bag containing duct tape, zip ties, condoms, a taser, and a rusted crowbar. The man, whose name I won't repeat, was a registered sex offender with a record of stalking minors. He had served time, been released, and drifted between towns under false names. He wasn't even from Pinehill. He'd been living in his car, trailing us from Walmart and parking across from our house for days. The DA treated it seriously. With the stalking, his intent, and the items in his possession, they had enough to hold him without bail. He never admitted anything, but the pieces fit together. For months after, I didn't sleep properly. I kept my bedroom light on, locked my window, and my parents installed motion sensors. Dad kept his shotgun nearby. Ashley never made another Walmart joke. The most terrifying part wasn't what actually happened. It was what almost did. The way he quietly slipped into our lives, unnoticed. How easy it was to laugh and feel in control when, in reality, we were already prey. I was 24 when it happened. A full decade has passed, yet it still drifts into my thoughts at the most unexpected moments. Standing in a store, when someone trails too close behind me, or when I overhear a stranger say something that doesn't quite sit right. It was 2013, and at the time, I was living in a suburb just outside Savannah, Georgia. Not the picturesque historic district with cobblestone streets and Spanish moss swaying over shaded squares, but the stretch packed with endless parking lots, grocery chains, and mid-tier restaurants lined up every half mile. I'd gotten married young at 22, and by 24 I was a mother to a nearly 2-year-old, managing a mortgage that was always just barely paid, with a husband pulling 50-hour weeks installing HVAC systems. We hadn't planned to make a Walmart run that night. Dinner had been leftover meatloaf, I still remember, and the baby had smeared mashed potatoes across her cheeks and clothes. We were low on wipes. I needed milk, and it was one of those quick trips. "Let's just go to the one on Forsyth," I told Steve, my husband. "Closer than the mall." He didn't want to go, but said he'd tag along anyway. We bundled our daughter, buckled her into the car seat, and drove the short distance. It was a Tuesday, somewhere around 8:45 p.m. The sun long gone, the parking lot sparsely dotted with cars beneath flickering yellow streetlights. Inside, the store felt cold, the fluorescent bulbs making my skin prickle. Steve and I split up. He headed toward the clearance section by sporting goods, forever hunting for discounted fishing lures or cheap ammo, while I pushed the cart toward the baby aisle with our daughter. I'd been there no more than 5 minutes when I crouched to grab a small pack of pink hair ties. That's when I heard a soft, "Excuse me." Expecting an employee, I turned and found a petite woman, about 5 feet tall, standing uncomfortably close. She looked Asian, maybe in her 50s, with shoulder-length black hair, a serene smile, and a small black tablet in one hand. A crossbody purse hung heavy at her side. "Yes?" I asked, instinctively stepping back. Her voice was calm as she asked, "Do you believe in God?" The question caught me off guard. I'd been raised Catholic, though I wasn't active in church, and I was terrible at confrontation, especially with people who seemed polite. I gave a small nod. "Yes." Her eyes brightened, though not warmly, more like a spark had been lit. "Good," she replied, and with a tap on her screen she angled the tablet toward me. A slideshow appeared. Phrases in English like "God is not a man, she is waiting," alongside hazy religious imagery, clouds, a glowing figure, text in an unfamiliar script. "I'm sorry," I began, nudging the cart forward, but she cut in. "Just 1 minute, it's important." "You believe, right? Then this is for you." I glanced at my daughter, distracted with the little steering wheel on the cart. "No thank you," I said more firmly. Still, she shadowed me down each aisle, speaking quickly now about a woman prophet, a hidden truth, an invitation to gather. She handed me a card with a gold cross on the front and the name The Spirit and Bride Church. On the back in handwriting was a local address, not a church, just a street and house number I didn't recognize. "Do you live nearby? Do you want peace for your daughter? Safety? We're meeting Thursday. Bring her," she urged. I forced a tight nod, tucking the card into my purse, and that's when Steve appeared from behind, holding a fishing knife he'd found on clearance. "You good, babe?" he asked. The woman froze, looked at him, and something in her demeanor shifted instantly. She didn't smile or say goodbye, just turned and walked briskly toward the back of the store. I told Steve only that a lady had been trying to get me to come to her church. He frowned, called it weird, and we paid before heading home. I didn't think much more about it until months later. In January, I was half dozing on the couch while my daughter napped, scrolling Facebook, when a post stopped me. A girl I knew from high school, Tiffany, had shared a warning to women. It mentioned a Walmart, specifically the one on Windsor Road, and described an older Asian woman with 2 men approaching women to ask if they believed in God, then giving out a false church address. "It's not a church," the post read. "People have gone missing. My cousin was nearly pulled into a van. Police are investigating. Share this." I felt a cold rush. Digging my old purse from the closet, I dumped it onto the floor. Incredibly, the card was still in the inner pocket. Same church name, same gold cross, same handwritten address. I looked it up. The street was still listed, but the house no longer showed as occupied. On Google Maps, it was a blurred, boarded-up home with a red-painted door. I called Steve over. His face paled as I explained. Same exact story, same pitch, same tablet. He pointed out she had known about our daughter, had asked if I wanted safety for her. How many others had she approached like that? I phoned the non-emergency police line. The woman I spoke to was polite but weary sounding. She took the report, promised to keep an eye out, but nothing ever came of it. I shredded the card and made a quiet rule for myself. Never shop alone at night again. 2 years later, in 2015, I stumbled on a tiny local news piece. Police in Savannah investigating reports of a group luring women under the guise of religious recruitment. No arrests, no names, but the neighborhood mentioned was the same as that address. I rarely share this story, not because I'm worried people won't believe me. Many don't, but I've spent the past year actively trying to keep it out of my own mind. Still, every time I step into a public restroom, especially when I'm alone, I'm taken right back. I hear those boots again. I feel the air shift. I feel eyes on me. This happened last fall, on a Thursday evening in early October. Around 6:30 p.m., I stopped at a Walmart on my way to work. Nothing dramatic, just a quick errand to grab a few things. Travel-sized toiletries, protein bars, hair ties, and one of those electrolyte drinks I always take on my night shifts. I work overnight in the ER at Crest Hill Medical in Ravensfield, a medium-sized town just outside Pittsburgh. I've been a registered nurse for almost 8 years. I mention that not for sympathy, but because anyone who has worked in a hospital long enough develops a kind of second sense for people, for danger, for the moment when suspicion turns into certainty. That evening I'd been to the gym beforehand and hadn't gone home, so I still needed to change into my scrubs. I was running late, but I figured I had time to stop, shop, and change in the hospital locker room. When I was about to check out, I realized I should use the restroom. Not urgently, just that better now than later feeling. The bathrooms were at the front, near the customer service desk. You've seen hundreds like it, harsh fluorescent lights, dull beige walls that probably match some government paint code, cracked tiles, and a faint lemon cleaner scent barely masking something older and sour. It was empty when I entered. No voices, no footsteps, just silence. I went into the second stall from the end, hung my small basket on the hook, and sat down. I remember scrolling my phone. My husband Nathan had sent a meme about nurses being 60% caffeine and 40% sarcasm. I was replying when the restroom door creaked open. Then footsteps. Not sneakers, not flats, boots with heels, steady, certain. They came in and stopped. Not by a stall, not at the mirror, just somewhere out of sight from where I was. I didn't lean to check. At first I assumed they might be fixing their makeup, texting or waiting on someone. But no sound followed. No stalls opening, no hand dryer, no cough, no shuffle. Just stillness. A minute passed. Then 2. My irritation turned to unease. The quiet wasn't random, it was deliberate. I set my phone aside and listened. Still nothing. I leaned forward just enough to peek under the partition. Boots, black leather, sharp pointed toes, spotless. Standing near the tiled wall by the entrance facing the stalls, perfectly still. My heart jolted once, then settled into a shallow, fast rhythm. Not panic yet, but dread. I waited motionless, holding my breath as much as I could. Why wasn't she speaking? Then the irrational questions crept in. Was she sleepwalking? Did she hear me and freeze? Waiting for someone? None of it fit. She had entered, walked a few feet, and stopped, never moving again. I checked my phone. 8 minutes. I texted Nathan. Weird situation. Woman in Walmart bathroom just standing by the door. Not moving. Been here a while. He called instantly. I whispered, "Don't say my name. Just stay on the line." I tried to explain, speaking barely above breath. That's when I heard it. A faint shift. One boot turned slightly. Then the creak of the door opening. I didn't hear footsteps leaving. Just the door's groan, then a soft thud as it closed. I counted 5 seconds. 10. Then leaned forward again. Gone. No boots. No legs. No sound. My hand felt weak as I grabbed my basket. I flushed, stepped out slowly. Empty. Even the air felt hollow. I went straight to customer service. Calm, as I'm trained to be. I explained what had happened. The woman behind the counter nodded, like this wasn't the strangest thing she'd heard, and asked if I wanted a manager. I said yes. A man in a red vest and headset came over and I told him too. They called security. A heavy-set man named Brian offered to walk me to my car. I told him I was heading to work and just needed to change. He escorted me anyway, and I was grateful. Later I kept replaying it in my mind. Not because anything happened, but because it felt like something almost did. Around 3 a.m. when the ER was quiet, I messaged Nathan, asking if he thought I'd overreacted. He said no, not at all. The strangest part came the next day. Out of curiosity, I returned to Walmart, not to confront anyone, just to check. The same customer service woman was there. I quietly asked if security had reviewed the footage. She leaned in and said, "They said nothing showed up on the bathroom cameras, but we only have cameras at the door, not inside." I blinked. "But she came in," I said. She hesitated. The camera for the restroom hallway didn't show anyone going in at that time. Just you. I froze. She added, not until 10 minutes later. An older woman, then a mom with 2 kids, but no one before you or during. She looked uneasy, wanting to end the talk. I didn't push. Back at the hospital, I couldn't shake the thought. If no one else went in, what had I heard? What had I seen? Who or what stood there in boots, silent? I've gone over it endlessly. Maybe she slipped in right behind me, hidden from the camera angle. Maybe there's a blind spot. Maybe she entered and left so quietly she didn't register. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. That was not confusion, and it wasn't hesitation. It was waiting. And when Nathan's voice, a man's voice, carried through the door, that's when she left. I avoid public restrooms now when possible. I always check beneath the stalls. I always listen before going in. Because nothing happened that night, but something almost did. And I never want to find out what.